and stay on Iraq. John King?
I want to continue in this vein and hone in on the very point you just made, because one of you, unless this remarkable campaign year takes another wacky, unpredictable turn, is going to be running against a decorated war hero who is going to say that you don't have the experience to be commander-in-chief. And you have both said it's not about that type of experience, it's about judgment. You both had to make a judgment a short time ago in your job in the United States Senate about whether to support the surge. And as that was going on, Senator Clinton, you had the commanding general in Iraq before you, and you said, I think that the reports you provide to us really require the willing suspension of disbelief. Your words to General Petraeus. I want you to look at Iraq now and listen to those who say the security situation is better. Ideal? No, but better. Some say significantly. In recent days, even some steps toward the political reconciliation. Is Iraq today better off than it was 6 months or a year ago because of the surge?
Well, John, I think you forget a very important premise of the surge. The rationale of the surge was to create the space and time for the Iraqi government to make the decisions that only it can make. Now, there is no doubt, given the skill and the commitment of our young men and women in uniform, that putting more of them in will give us a tactical advantage and will provide security in some places, and that has occurred. But the fact is that the purpose of it has not been fulfilled. The Iraqi government has slowly inched toward making a few of the decisions in a less than complete way, but it hasn't taken advantage of the sacrifice and the losses of life and billions of dollars that have occurred since the surge began. That is why I have said, upon taking office, I would ask the Secretary of Defense and the Joint Chiefs of Staff and my security advisors to give me a plan so that I could begin withdrawing our troops within 60 days. And I would begin that with a very clear message to the Iraqis that they no longer had a blank check as they had been given by President Bush, that as we withdraw our troops, probably 1 to 2 brigades a month, they would have to step up and make these decisions. I believe that is in the best interest of our military, which has been stretched thin. Last night in Brownsville, a woman grabbed my hand and said, please, my husband's there for the 3rd time, bring him home. And I told her privately what I have said publicly many times. I will bring him home, because I do not think it is in the interest of America or of the Iraqis that we continue to be there. It is up to the Iraqis to decide the kind of future they will have.
Senator Obama, in the same vein, you were also opposed to the surge from the beginning. Were you wrong?
Well, I think it is indisputable that we've seen violence reduced in Iraq. And that's a credit to our brave men and women in uniform. In fact, the 1st Cavalry out of Fort Hood played an enormous role in pushing back Al-Qaeda out of Baghdad, and we honor their service. But this is a tactical victory imposed upon a huge strategic blunder. And I think that when we're having a debate with John McCain, it is going to be much easier for the candidate who was opposed to the concept of invading Iraq in the first place to have a debate about the wisdom of that decision than having to argue about the tactics subsequent to the decision. Because ultimately, that's what's at stake. Understand, not only have we been diverted from Afghanistan, we've been diverted from focusing on Latin America. We contribute, our entire foreign aid to Latin America is $2.7 billion, approximately what we spend in Iraq in a week. And is it any surprise then that you've seen people like Hugo Chavez and countries like China move into the void? Because we've been neglectful of that. Iran is the single biggest strategic beneficiary of us having invaded Iraq. And that is something that I think John McCain has to come to terms with. So that is a debate that I'm happy to have. one last point I want to make on this, and that is the incredible burden that has been placed on the American people, starting with military families, and the fact that we still are not doing right by our veterans, that we still don't honor their service, that there's still homeless veterans, that we still don't screen properly for post-traumatic stress disorder and make sure that they're getting mental health services that they need, that we are still having veterans in South Texas have to drive 250 miles to access a veterans hospital. That's unacceptable. But we talked about the economy earlier. The fact that we're spending $12 billion every month in Iraq means that we can't engage in the kind of infrastructure improvements that are going to make us more competitive. It means that we can't deliver on the kinds of health care reforms that both Senator Clinton and I are looking for. And that is also an argument that we have to have with John McCain, because he has said that he is willing to have these troops over there for 100 years. And the notion that we would sustain that kind of effort and neglect not only making us more secure here at home, more competitive here at home, allow economy to sink. John McCain says he doesn't really understand the economy that well. It is clear from his embrace of George Bush's policies that he doesn't. And that's what I intend to change when I'm President of the United States of America.
All right, we've got to take another quick break. We've got a lot more ahead. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Texas Democratic debate. Stay with us after the debate. Anderson Cooper and the best political team on television will have lots of analysis. But back to the debate, John King.
Thank you. Both of you have been harshly critical of the Bush administration for its secrecy, what you consider overuse of secrecy and executive power. Tonight, Senator Obama, you've talked about more transparency. You also at one point criticized earmarks. And yet a recent report came out that identified you at the lower on the list in terms of how much money senators seek and sneak into the budget for these pork barrel spending projects. But it still said you were responsible for $91 million in earmarks, and you have refused to say where the money went, what it's for, why.
No, that's not true. We've actually disclosed, John, all our earmarks. And so, we'll be happy to provide you with that information, because I believe very strongly in transparency. As I indicated earlier, one of the things that I did last year was to pass a bill with Tom Coburn, very conservative Republican, but a sincere fiscal conservative, and we got together and created what we call Google for Government. It's a searchable database where every single dollar of federal spending is posted on the internet so that ordinary voters can take a look. And if they see a bridge to nowhere being built, they know where it's going and who sponsored it. And if they see a no-bid contract going to Halliburton, they can check that out too. And the idea is that we open up the process so that the American people can make judgments about whether or not government is doing what it's supposed to be doing with its taxpayer money. And I've been consistently in favor of more disclosure around earmarks. Now, keep in mind, a lot of these are worthy projects in our states, and I have actively pursued projects that I think are important. But I want to make sure that they're not done in the dark of night, that they're not done in committee, that everybody stands up and says this is the kind of spending that I think is important, and I've consistently supported those efforts. I will push for those as President of the United States of America.
Senator Clinton, as you know, I think your number was about $342 million. You say they're worthy projects, as Senator Obama did for your state, and that's part of your job, to get money for worthy projects back in your state. Senator McCain, as you know, is proud of going around the country saying he's never asked for an earmark, and he will never ask for an earmark. On the specific issue of pork barrel spending, fiscal accountability by the government, at a time when many Americans frankly think, whether it's the House or the Senate, that y'all waste money on things that aren't important to them, don't affect their daily lives. Does he have a better case to make to the American people that I have done this my entire career? I will do it as president on the issue of wasteful pork barrel spending.
Well, no, not at all, because he supported the wasteful tax cuts of the Bush administration and the Iraq war with the billions of dollars that have been spent, and wants it to continue. You know, when President Bush came into office, he inherited a balanced budget and a surplus, and it is gone. And we now are looking at a projected deficit of $400 billion under the new Bush budget, and a $9 trillion debt. We borrow money from the Chinese to buy oil from the Saudis. That is not a winning strategy for America. I will get us back to fiscal responsibility, and I will make it clear that the Bush tax cuts on the up